In the last episode, we talked about deferred remuneration. It is a concept that requires you to do the work first and only then allow yourself a reward. An example was an experiment with marshmallows conducted by Walter Mischel. But there was one comment that prompted me to dig into this topic in more detail. Indeed, the marshmallow story didn't end there. In new studies, scientists don't emphasize deferred remuneration, but rather look more closely at the financial situation of families. And as you might guess, rich and poor kids will behave differently. Let's see how the story of the marshmallow experiment developed. So, meet our next expert, Dr. Tyler Watts from New York University's Steinhardt School of Culture, Education and Human Development. In 2018, a new study was published where he and his colleagues reproduced the great Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment. I still remember as an undergraduate being fascinated by the findings from the famous marshmallow test when I first encountered them in my Introduction to Psychology course. As you remember, Mischel conducted his famous experiment almost 60 years ago, and after the publication of the results, many parents were obsessed with the deferred remuneration approach. Specifically in the USA, some parents interpreted the results of the marshmallow experiment as an accurate representation of the success of their child in the future. Just do not eat a marshmallow. Don't do it. No, 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 Catherine! It's all gone. Our child has no future. So, Watts' group decided to run an improved version of this experiment. The original version involved 653 children, while the new one featured 918. Previously, only 94 participants reached the stage where long-term analysis of success was possible, and now that quantity did not decrease. And most importantly, the original experiment featured only children from a single educational institution, Stanford School, which, by the way, is meant for wealthy families. Now, social and economic factors, such as family income level and parental education, were taken into account. For example, 500 out of 900 mothers didn't have higher education. And when they looked at the children whose mothers had higher education, there was no difference between them and the group whose mothers didn't have higher education. Those who managed to wait for the second marshmallow did not have clearly better results of a standardized test for impatient children. That is, patient children didn't have better grades than the impatient ones, and judging by the polls, no particular difference in behavior was found in adulthood. The same situation was observed with a group of children whose mothers didn't have higher education. So, this proves once again that having a diploma does not mean anything. In real life, one must have something more than a mere degree, for example, real skills. But let's not stray from the subject. It became more interesting when they began to compare these groups with each other. The study took into account family income and the environment in which a 3-year-old was growing. For example, how well parents understand their child, their physical, emotional characteristics, and how they respond to the child's signals, as well as the number of books in the house. As Mother of Dragons said, never trust anyone whose TV is bigger than their bookshelf. What are you looking around for? Your bookshelf. And at that point, interesting facts began to surface. It turned out that most often children from wealthy families managed to wait for the second marshmallow, while the poor, on the contrary, could not resist and were eager to get the sweet here and now. And in an attempt to find motivation, or rather the lack of such among the poor, Watts' group came to the following conclusion. For poor families, life provides fewer guarantees. Yes, there may be food in their fridge today, but it isn't certain that it will be there tomorrow. In this case, there is a risk if something doesn't happen here and now, then it will never happen. They live in conditions where parents say, "Today we can't buy you ice cream, you will get it later," and even more. And of course, the parents cannot keep their promise. They just want to calm their child and they really hope that it would work out later, but the money won't come later. At the same time, children from well-educated and wealthy families were much more comfortable with deferred remuneration. We can say that they start leveling up this skill right from the cradle. Well, for them, it's easier to postpone it. Their experience tells them that adults have enough resources to always keep the fridge full. And even if children don't need to postpone the reward today, if they want to eat ice cream today, they are sure that tomorrow their parents will get them more. That is, they are confident in the future. And so they feel okay when they are asked to wait in order to double the reward. They are certain that in the end, they will receive it. And the most interesting thing is that similar conclusions have already appeared in other studies. For example, in one book, you can see its authors and the title on your screen. In this book, it was described in detail how poverty makes people choose short-term rewards rather than long ones. The main idea is that without a steady income, a person changes their way of thinking about things that are available now. In other words, there is no point in thinking about the second marshmallow when the child has reason to believe that the first one may disappear. Another study in this area was conducted by a sociologist from Nevada, Renita Ray. She also wrote a book in which she described in detail how many teenagers are forced to take low-skilled jobs and work for many hours in order to make ends meet and provide financial support to her family. And, you will not believe it, but despite the fact that sometimes they can't afford to buy enough food on the day they receive their salary, they go off the rails, if you can call it that, and they reward themselves with burgers or new clothes or hair dye. We can generalize these discoveries and say the following. The poor are trying to please their children as soon as they get a chance, while wealthier parents make their children wait to receive a more valuable reward later. Perhaps sweets or hair dye seem like silly gifts to you, but do not forget, for an average Mississippi family, this is the only thing they can afford. And for the poor children, a present like that, a small portion of joy, makes their life more tolerable, especially when there is no guarantee that they will get to experience joy tomorrow. People cannot accumulate enough resources to get out of a poor environment. And when there is something extra, they spend it on small things to brighten up their hard life. So it turns into a vicious circle that can't be broken, a poverty trap which only a few can escape. You may be wondering, how did we get from marshmallows to poverty? Let's now quickly build this puzzle. 60 years ago, Walter Mischel conducted an experiment with marshmallows in which the initial goal was to observe the psychological struggle within a person, the confrontation between want and need. Then, after 20 years, seemingly new relationships between the ability to delay rewards and future successes were noticed. This, by the way, provoked an obsession with the results in some parents. Tyler Watts then released a 2.0 version of his study and questioned the strong correlations of the original experiment. And now the question is, was Mischel wrong? From the point of view of the layman, he probably was. From the scientific one, it was just a certain stage in history. Had there been no Mischel experiment, there would be no Tyler experiment. The media often stick to a categorical point of view. This goes to the left and that goes to the right. This one is good, that one is evil. Mischel is wrong and Watts is right. Otherwise, no one will read it. No one will watch reasonable videos. People need conflict. And here is what Watts himself said. There is no doubt that Mischel's work has left an indelible mark on the way we think about young children and their cognitive and socio-emotional development. And here is more. Of course, these new findings should not be interpreted to suggest that gratification delay is completely unimportant, but rather than focusing only on teaching young children to delay gratification is unlikely to make much of a difference. So, here is a thing about you in particular. Will deferred remuneration help you personally? In some matters, it will. Well, at least it can be used to fight procrastination. But will this approach alone get you out of poverty? No, you will need something more. I hope you don't expect concrete answers from me. After all, if the advice from the internet guys worked, everyone would be rich, right? Smash that like button and subscribe. And I'm Bony Right.